Yo, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Neptunes Sunday. It's your boy V Moss, my partner in crime, Vogue. What's good?
What's up? Good to see you as always.
Good to see you too. Looking fresh after spending some time with the Queen this weekend.
I am a new woman, truly.
So we didn't even talk about this. Like we recorded episodes since I went to go see her, right? Yes,
Yeah.
I think that was the Robin Thicke episode. We just wanted to get that over with. So like we didn't get a chance to talk about Beyonce, but definitely worth the money, 100%. And good thing you didn't get to get in the rain version either, the rain episode.
We picked the best day. I also have a secret that I'm only going to reveal on this podcast. So if you listen to this episode, you'll understand.
Drop it. Let's go.
I was on the internet cussing people out about not talking when she says on mute. Cussing people out. And so, you have a couple drinks beforehand. So when that part comes, I was so excited about the dance break. I whispered to my friend, I was like, this is my favorite dance break. And my friend was like, Vogue, you're
You,
supposed to be on mute.
you blew it. I can't believe you blew
I
it.
mean, you said I blew it, but she said that DC won that everybody on mute.
And I publicly gave you credit for that too. And you literally just came on here
I
and
took it.
said that you didn't deserve it. That's okay. That's enough. Okay. Well, bottom line, Beyonce show is dope. If you have the come to your city, you have the money and the funds and the time to go see it, we strongly encourage it. But let's get to it. We always say, especially when we have someone join us on the podcast, we're always blessed to have people want to be a part of this and share our space with us. So, special guest today, my man from Philly, Cory Townes, multi-talented, multi-passionate, creative in the space. We're happy to have you on the show today, Cory. Welcome to the show.
Oh man, it's my pleasure, man. I feel like it's been long overdue. I feel like I can count on maybe two hands how many times I've been out and like somebody's like, yo, I feel like you need to like meet my man Vaughan. And I was just like, yo, like who's like, yo, like he got money or something? He's like, nah, like you need to meet him and get on the podcast. Like it's come from various different people, various different ways, various different avenues. So I'm a firm believer of good people being connected with good people, man. And I had a chance to meet Vogue at what was that? What was that? What
It
was
was
that?
a discussion of
When I did In Search of at Eaton. Okay,
insert.
so yeah,
Yep.
that's what sealed the deal. That last one was sealed the deal. Me and Vogue met when I came down to DC.
I do want to say you told me I was the 10th person to come up to you, and I was like, it's only
That's
two of
that's facts.
us.
Yeah, facts. No, I mean it was like no lie. It was mad people that kind of came up to me. Oh, and that was just like, yo, like, it was just over mad different ways and mad different times. Just like, yo, you should come on this podcast, go on this podcast. I had a chance to speak about my favorite album, which was In Search of to Eaton. Shout out to my boy Tally and the whole Eaton hotel thing. It was a good joint. So I'm very happy that we could finally have a chance to get this down and get this going, man, for real.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely want to shout out the homie Nick, my man Tinsley, even like Marcus Collins, Dr. Marcus Collins. I had him on the show, and he was like, "Yo, you need
Man,
to." He's like, Cory Towns, like, man, like, come on, dog. Yo, my guy. I think y'all went to maybe grade school together. Raheem Mapp, that's my boy.
yeah, me and him, we went to high school together.
That's my
He went
boy.
to Central. That's my guy. He's still I know he's doing a lot of good work with like Temple basketball and stuff. So that tracks that y'all were lined up. That's tough.
That's my
Him good people.
That's my guy. Like him and his wife actually just moved. I think they might be moving to DMV soon.
Oh,
But
word.
yeah,
Okay.
once he said he knew, I was like, yo, this has got to happen. It's too many people, man. Like too many people. So we talked about you being multi-hyphenate, multi-passionate, creative. Like, let's start with the writing. Like, talk about what motivated you to pursue your passion in writing.
I mean, for me, it kind of started. It started, I would say, probably maybe around college. I went to Lincoln University of Pennsylvania. Back in what was that? Class of '09. So like I was saying about freshman sophomore year. I had some friends of mine that actually went to Temple. That like kind of all around the same age. We all came up. Working at a sneaker store in Philly called Ubik. From that sneaker store, we started our own clothing line called Babylon Cartel. From that clothing line, we kind of created a blog extension of it. And this is what, 2008, 2009. So this is, what people now refer to as the blog era. And, when we did it, admittedly so, like I was like very, very adept of like writing. Like I've always been like a writer. I've always wanted to write. I was great at English. I sucked at math in school. So like I kind of just had a natural penchant for taking, taking topics and subjects and being able to write about it. So, we didn't really know what blogs were. We didn't really know what goes on blogs or things like that. We just kind of took it as an opportunity to share, number one, our clothes and the clothing line in itself, but also things that we liked at the time. So, everything from the music we listened to, the clothes that, we wore, the places we liked to, thing like parties and shit we would throw, like just everything kind of made it on the blog. And what we didn't know is that, as there was the BabylonCartel.com in Philly, there's blogs popping up literally all over the country and essentially the world of, young creatives kind of doing the same thing. So, you had GC to BC in the DMV area, shout out to my brothers, Modi and Quinn, you know what I'm saying? RIP to the Don. You had Cremo down in Atlanta. You had Ashley Outrageous, shout out to my homegirl Ashley, shout out to the guys Cremo, like Dez and Be Right. It really was kind of like a precursor of a time where a lot of people who are doing really amazing things right now kind of got their start. And I would even say less of got their start, but more just found it was like the first time we as young people were able to kind of express ourselves with like this very, I would kind of say, counterculture of the internet, and then also find like-minded people to do that. You know what I'm saying? You figure social media was literally starting. Like I remember I was on Facebook when you needed, a college email to get on there. Like it was the Facebook. And like even that, like MySpace and shit, like, going to people's pages and seeing, really crude code and HTML of like those nasty, in hindsight, nasty, sparkly, Neptunes graphics and Pharrell pictures and shit. Like everybody kind of had all that stuff. But it was, it was really dope at the time. And when you really think about it, it was like kind of one of the first opportunities for people, like I said, to kind of really expose themselves and kind of say like, hey, this is who I am. This is, what I like. And you found like-minded people like that. So, my one, business partner, Gianni, he was in charge of all the clothes at the time, and I pretty much spearheaded the blog. And from there, it kind of allowed me an opportunity to really kind of hone my chops writing. And then, like I remember in around 2012, 2013, me and the Babylon guys, we split ways, as things happen, but those are my brothers for life. And like we've since been very good and very, got our friendship back over the years. And I decided I want to kind of step on my own and do my own thing. So I started, kind of doing almost like correspondent work in Philadelphia. Like I had a chance to really meet and get in good with the representatives from Live Nation here. And it was one of those things where it was very much counterculture, but brands and people started seeing that there was something there. And I used to have it where I used to host concerts and host shows. So whenever someone would come to the city, I'd be the one to like host their show, and rather than get paid, I would just be like, hey, just give me 15, 20 minutes with them and let me interview them. So, and that's everyone from A$AP Rocky and the A$AP Mob to, I was the first person in Philly to interview Kendrick. It's Lil B, that's Big Crit, that's Juicy J, like just people of that circuit and people of those times that were really starting to, make their way around the country in different places. So anybody time somebody came to Philly, I would talk to them. And yeah, man, I got my first, real writing opportunity from my guy Mike Yee. He used to, be an editor at Vibe magazine. He asked me to cover the Red Bull 3 style DJ competition, which ironically enough, a good friend of mine won, Matt Fisherman, and my dad DJ'd it. Oh, I'm sorry, my dad judged it. So I had a chance to kind of cover both sides of the, both sides of the competition. And that was like my first like real byline. That was my first, just a real opportunity, just like kind of get on a scene like that. And from there, it just allowed me to kind of write for a bunch of different publications, and that I kind of crafted my way out as a writer. I also said Matt Fishman. That's Matt Law. That's what he goes by. That was weird. Matt, don't kill me. But yeah, man, that's kind of how I got my start. And writing was beautiful. Writing, especially, upon moving to New York. I've been in New York for 10 years. So I would say like my first, 4 or 5 years in New York, as a writer and as a music writer. I never called myself a journalist. I did not go to J school. But as a music writer, it was a great time to be a music writer. And, it really opened my eyes to a lot of different things. And, I had a chance to meet a lot of really cool people and do a lot of dope work.
Yeah. And that's one thing like I think is really dope about, shout out to It's the Real and the blog era, like just to kind of, obviously the blog era is a huge focal point of the music, but I think like you talked about is so many people got to cut their teeth in the space behind the pen, behind the computer, that are people like you and people like my boy Tinsley and, the whole TS crew, that John Gotti, like there's so many people from that umbrella that are out in the world doing such dope things. So like, I think that that's a really important piece and part of the history of our generation in music is like, we realized that we always knew that there was other opportunities to have a job and do things in that space. But like, this was a whole nother section that we kind of created, that we kind of just like came up in our generation, which is really dope.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think, like I have younger parents, so my parents, were in like their late 30s, maybe early 40s when like kind of this stuff was happening. But, they had a chance to experience, hip hop. I think hip hop has many golden eras, but they had a chance to experience hip hop during like, a golden eras, like the Tupac and the Tupac and Biggie era and stuff like that. And I feel like with us being of that age from, 18 in college to early 20s, and, it was the first time that I would probably say we had a chance to grow up with our favorite artists. It's something I often talk to my parents about a lot. Like, what was it like to be in the club and, like B.I.G's there? Or what was it like to be in the club and like, oh, you heard Jay-Z's coming through, you know what I'm saying, as like a peer, as like somebody that's like your age. Like, I remember thinking even back then how like kind of wild it is that like me and Kendrick were the same age. So, and it felt very like when we did talk, like we talked on, on film, like when we did talk, like it didn't feel like I was talking to like an artist. It felt like I was talking to like somebody that's like my age, right? So I feel like the blog era is the first, I think not even the first, I feel like the blog era is our time where we've grown up with our artists. We've seen our artists go from, wild, rambunctious early 20-year-olds to like, you know what I'm saying? We've seen A$AP Rocky and Rihanna have like kids. Like that shit is still kind of like wild to me, right? Like, because you figure it's like, yo, I don't know these people obviously, but like we've seen these people grow up over the last, 10, 15 years. So, shout out to Eric and Jeff, man. Those are my brothers for life. I'm so proud of them with what they've done with the blog era. Like I remember being in a crib about a year and change ago, and like they showed me what they released of like this big board that was like a color coded sticky pads, and it was literally all different episodes. And like they told me this project that they were looking to embark on and stuff, and like to see, not just to see it come to light, but then like to see the success behind it, and I would even really say like the appreciation, like people really appreciated this project that they did. So those are my dogs, man. Shout out to them. I'm very, very happy and very proud of them.
For sure.
Very cool. I think it's interesting to talk about the evolution of hip hop, but I think, as kids of the internet, we can also notice that like there's an evolution of journalism, and there's a lot of conversation about, how journalism has evolved, what it's like in the culture and in hip hop specifically. And I'm interested as somebody who writes, you're not a journalist. What are your thoughts on the current landscape of hip hop media?
Man, I mean, I feel like the landscape of media and just how I feel like the landscape of media and how we take in information has completely changed, amazingly in the last, I'd probably say 5 to not even 5 to 10 years, maybe like 5 to like 7, 5 to 8. Like, with I was very much one of those people that like, I'm big on resting on laurels, but I'm also big on like knowing and admitting the work that I put in, which is why I never like when I had the opportunity, I was blessed with the chance to be in music writing. Like I wasn't, again, I didn't go to journalism school. I'm not going to call myself a journalist. I feel like we are a generation, and those under us, we are a generation where people give themselves titles that they did not necessarily work for, and more importantly, probably don't understand the weight of, journalism comes with journalism comes with a lot. And one thing I will say is I was kind of mentored by legitimate journalists. I had a chance to work, obviously on both on the freelance end, but I had a chance to work at Ebony Magazine as a staff writer for about a year and a half. So like, that staff and everyone who was there, my main boss and my main mentor, her name is Kieran Mayo. She helped launch Honey Magazine back in like the early 2000s. You know what I'm saying? Like she is she was one of the early beat writers at the source. Like she is a journalist. She's a journalist. So like even back then it was kind of a thing of like, people thinking like, oh, I have a blog, so like I know what I'm talking about. And I feel like there's a very fine line between, genuine opinion and like I would say like criticism and outward outward exposures of knowledge. And now it's like totally different. Like I'm actually very, I guess, kind of saddened to see kind of where music writing has gone over the last couple of years, especially with how, people, like I said, how people taking content, in the form of like everything so short form, like I remember, like as recent as 2016, 2017, you could write something online and you would get views. You would get people to actually read your article online. And now it's like, if it's not on my phone in a form of a 15 to 30-second TikTok or something of the sort, like people aren't really checking for it. Like even the idea of like the concept of music videos is pretty much slim to none anymore. Like, there aren't really writers. Well, I won't say there aren't writers, because there very much are writers who are still doing amazing work. It's just that I've seen how they've had to battle this age of microwave media. And, I think it's just a lot harder. And one thing about me, like I'm 36, so I find myself very much a digital child, but like I still find myself to have large parts of like analog taste. Like I still have music, I still have magazine subscriptions, right? Like I still get magazines to come to the crib just to have something tangible, something I can like hold on to and like actually like hold. Like, if I do see something, like if an article or something like that, like I will actively try to read it rather than get like a 20-second, short form video. And I think that has done a lot with my own personal creativity, because it's just allowed me to kind of like, not lose the recipes that we once had. Like, somebody whose creativity I like is like Sean Brown, the designer, and like he's so adamant about like he collects old magazines and stuff like that and just everything like that. So I feel like that's kind of where I'm at. Like I would want things to not necessarily change, but I see how they can't necessarily stay the same. Give me one second, my bad. Let me drop off these sneaks. It just happened. I'll be right back.
Yep.
I'm glad he came down. I'm back.
Welcome back. Vaughan stepped off for one moment.
Okay. So you're based in DC, right?
I am.
So yeah, how the show is what they say it is? Beyonce.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yes, absolutely. It was so good.
You bet that everybody has that same, like, it's almost like a yes.
I was ready to go back the next day. I was like, where can I pull out another $600 to go again? But that was the rain day. So
the day you went was the rain day.
No, the day I went, the day that it didn't rain. The next day it rained. So I was like, well, glad I didn't like do a heist so I could go again. So
what was it, a bad rain or was it like a mist?
It was bad.
It was bad.
Oh, it was bad. Okay.
Yeah. She had to.
I'm about to say shit. Seeing Beyonce in the rain probably tough.
It was, they had to do shelter in place warnings before the show even started. And then Beyonce had to drop $100K to have the metro. Yeah. I was like, God, like, but it's worth it.
Baller and shit.
Yeah. I would say
the funny thing is go ahead. I'm sorry.
FedEx Field is just not well equipped for stadium shows, especially for something as big as Beyonce. So like it was already kind of difficult, but with the rain, that added element, I think things just went like nuts.
With stuff like that, I'm always so amazed at shit like that. It really just lets you know that like rich people and wealthy people live by a different set of rules. Because at what point does someone say, damn, it's a shelter in place, damn, and someone makes the call to say like, well, what if we kept the subways open? And like the fact that you could actually like that's such an outlandish suggestion that someone made. I don't know if it was Beyonce or whoever, but someone made it, which led to someone approving it, which led to someone saying, get me on the phone with whoever. You know what I'm saying? Like whoever runs MTA service, whoever runs something, and they actually agreed to do it. Like I always think like it really just shows like, wealthy motherfuckers, they got it, man. They can just do stuff like that.
Listen.
What would you say was your favorite song of the show? Well, both of y'all, because both of y'all said y'all went, right?
Go ahead, you go first.
I'm actually a fan of some of the slower songs off of her new album. So Plastic Off the Sofa, Virgo's Groove, those are my favorite moments from the show.
So let me also give some context. Like me and my fiance decided to go to the show at the Link like maybe 30 minutes before.
I heard that was a good one.
Like that was the first one in the States.
Yeah, I heard Philly showed out. I was very proud of that.
Our one was very impressed and caught off guard in a good way, the way that she started the show with Dangerously in Love. I was like, yo, you coming out like just giving the straight vocals,
Coming
no
out swinging.
no energy. It's just, I'm out here, I'm about to, baby, I love you. Like, come on, dog. Like, but my favorite song on the new album, which is my favorite moment from the concert, is Church Girl. Like, that's my to me, that's a Negro spiritual, man. Like,
Yeah.
The show was 2 days before my birthday, and so like on my birthday post on Instagram, it's a video clip that my fiance recorded of me just like, I'm gonna love on me, man. Nobody can judge me except for me. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the thing that's dope about Beyonce, man. Like, anybody can understand and appreciate the greatness and the energy and effort in the music that she puts out is great.
Absolutely.
I just remember, so like I've being one thing I've learned, and one thing I realized about myself becoming a DJ over the last couple of years, is that I don't listen to music the same as I used to before I started DJing. Before, I used to listen to music, and I guess now I think about it, I used to listen to music as a music writer. Like, okay, what is this? Do I like this? Do I enjoy this? Can I see people liking this? What is this music saying? So on and so forth. Now I listen to music, and the DJ ear kind of takes over, where it's just like, is this something that I can play? Is this something that can be played? So on and so forth. Yo, I remember the first time I heard Church Girl. Mind you, especially at this phase of my DJ career, I love playing house music. I've always been into house music. Like, my family has played house music and had me around house music all my life. So like, as people started getting into house music of like our age group and stuff like that, now like I've always had it around me. I always know shit. So like, when I heard she was doing like a dance album, I'm like, yo, she's gonna kill the dance album. I'm telling y'all that now. But I remember I heard Church Girl, and I was just like, yo, this shit is fucking amazing. And people hated Church Girl.
Crazy.
I did not understand. I saw so many people on it like, what is this? And I don't like this. And and I'm like, are y'all not hearing what I'm hearing? Like, the first thing I heard, I was like, yo, like, Church Girl. And again, from the DJ ear, I'm like, okay. Church Girl immediately goes into like the New Orleans bounce section of a set. Like, before I ever even did, like, I made remixes to Church Girl and all that stuff. Before I even did any of that, I was like, I can hear that. And I'm just like, when you hear the stuff that she's saying on it, I'm like, this is the song I would think that Beyonce fans would love. And I'm just like, I realize you can't. One thing I've grown to realize, both as a DJ and as a music writer, you cannot make people happy when you first release music. Same people I saw talking all this shit about Travis Scott's album, like a week or so later, after they've seen that it's like #1 on all Billboard charts, everybody's like, this is amazing, he's back. So,
yeah.
But I do agree. I don't know. I've actually never thought about what my favorite song on the album is. I would say Church Girl is probably one of them, but I definitely feel you of like, you hear it and you hear what she's saying, and like how she kind of like takes like the message of like loving oneself and being able to express yourself freely, and then also like she's shaking ass and body. Like, I feel like that's ill. So I feel you, dog. Like, yeah. I'd probably be up in that thing too, singing.
I think a lot of people perceive Beyonce as kind of like a gimmick, and like she's this pop star who's really famous around the world, but like she's really a music lover's musician. There's a lot of layers to her music, and like I think I listen to music kind of like as a former dancer. So like there are things I hear in music that other people are like, oh, what is this? Like, I loved the Travis Scott album immediately, but that's because I heard like all the texture and all the layers and stuff like that. So I think it's the same thing that happens with Beyonce almost. Like, people hear stuff, and until other people get on it, they're just like, I'm not used to this.
I don't know.
I'm right there with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, like, I also really like, I think she really spazzed on Heated. But I think for me, like, when it first came out, I didn't make it past, what's the song after Church Girl? Is it Virgo or Plastic? What's after
Plastic Off the Sofa?
I don't think I made it past those two songs. Like, for the first like 2 weeks, I would just get to Church Girl and run Church Girl back like maybe 5 times, and then maybe I pick it back up and come back to Plastic Off Sofa. But overall, man, like, it's an amazing, just like, I was listening to, and we getting way off topic, which is dope. That's the whole point of this. But I was listening to I got a playlist on Tidal called IPO Hove, and it's like basically Jay-Z passed 2016. So whenever 444 dropped and beyond. So like that's
old rich nigga Hove.
yes, IPO.
Okay. Yep.
You know what I'm saying? It's got Written Testimony with Jay Electronica in there. It's got the Carter's album in there. It's got some other random Lucy's. But to hear them do songs together, like one of my favorite Jay-Z Beyonce collaborations is Nice. I talk about that on this show all the time because Hove does what he does, and then
That's not the Pharrell one, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna do anything. Yeah.
Yes.
Listen, I'll tell you, because they were not batting a high percentage before that album. The two of them, like, they might have had a great chemistry as a marriage, but musically, this shit was not. Like, yeah, Nice was good. Like, Nice was obviously like one of my favorite joints on there, but it was just a great record. I feel you on that.
And I blame that on the other one, because the other two we had before that was the two DJ Khaled joints. So it's like Shining, which is okay, and then Top Off the Maybach, which is like, that's really just. But again, it's just the same conversation we had with Beyonce, the same conversation we had with Hove. Their mid is a high tier.
Their mid is high mid. High mid is crazy as a concept. I'm not gonna lie to you. It's very high mid. It's high level mid. That is nuts.
It is real different than some other your average person's mid. Like, and that's cool. Like, I think, you just gotta, like, a perfect example. Same conversation is like another song that came on that playlist was the Entrepreneur Joint with P and J, which is like, that is very mid, but it's like it's Jay-Z mid. So it's like when Hove comes on and he says lies told to you through YouTube's and Hulu's, you like, like,
you know what I think it is? I think that the mid is high. Mid can be mid for them, but it can still be high just because of the level of talent and craftsmanship and meticulousness that they have, right? Like, I'm not gonna lie. I definitely feel bad if and whenever there is a brick by any of my favorite artists, right? Like I see, especially now, because you figure a lot of them are either not putting out music at high clips, or it is damn near an event if they decide to do so. So it's like when you see it and you get it, you're like, such and such is dropping a song or whatever, and then you hear it and you just like, it's just not, it's not a good feeling. But what I will say, and I would probably really have to think about this, probably wouldn't think about this after, with this episode, was like, I don't think any of my favorite artists, so favorite artists would probably be like Jay-Z. Favorite artists would be like Kendrick. Favorite artists would be like, I could even say like, later Beyonce as I've come into Beyonce. Favorite artists would be like Tyler, the Creator. I haven't heard any of them release something like terribly bad in a long time.
Yeah.
So sure. I definitely agree with the concept of of high mid.
All right, man. So we talked about this a little bit before. I spent the past couple years living in your hometown, Philly. And for me, us growing up in our age group, for somebody who is not from up there, that was raised on Rockefeller and raised on a lot of music that came out of Philly during the time that we was growing up, it was dope to be there and to be in the spaces and share that energy with them, with those artists. Mm-hmm. So for you being from there, just talk about the musical history and significance of a place like Philly and how that kind of inspired your overall love of music.
I mean, man, where do I start? So I mean, it obviously starts at home, with my father, my father being DJ Jazzy Jeff, and it starts there. I feel like, funny enough, I didn't have a full grasp of who he was musically and who he and Will were musically and strictly musically, probably until the summer before I went to college. I was always very aware and very apparent that my father was a celebrity. I was always very aware that, Uncle Will is one of the biggest, movie stars in the world and stuff like that. But the summer before I went to school, I actually ended up living with him in Philly, like for like those like 3-4 months. And it was probably one of the first times that, being up from under mom's thumb, my dad definitely had a much more like, yo, you 18, not do what you want, but, kind of like go see the world type shit. So I just found myself just exploring a lot more, and that was a very explorative time of my life. And it was one of the first times I actually had interests of like listening to my dad's music. And, I remember just hearing, he's DJ, I'm a rapper. And just like listening to it, not from, this is my father, but, this is just a musical artist. And I was like, yo, like for this to come out back in, what was that? That was 86, 85. I'm like, yo, this shit is crazy. So it was one of those situations where, it started from there. My stepfather actually worked on the other side of music in Philadelphia as a manager and as a consultant for a lot of artists that came up from Philly. So, everybody from Eve to Beanie Siegel to Philly's Most Wanted. He had a label called Rockstar Entertainment that spawned Troy Carter. Troy Carter is probably one of the biggest names in music, tech, and culture now at this point. He's kind of like an uncle cousin to me. So like I've always just kind of been around it. Ironically enough, my stepdad is kind of who I found out about the Neptunes from, just because he did consulting for a group called Philly's Most Wanted. And in my house, it might be my sophomore year of high school. We had a three-story crib, and my room was on the top floor. And my parents, they would kind of like stack stuff. Like you needed, it's like a small little like angle stairway to get up to my room. They would kind of just stack miscellaneous shit in that little stairwell. No respect for my space, but I understood, didn't pay bills in that house. And one of the things that, like my stepdad would put there from time to time would be like stacks of cardboard boxes, but they were like kind of like long rectangular boxes that basically held promotional CDs for like different projects and albums and whatever. And I remember coming home and I saw a stack of them, and one of them was open, and it was Philly's Most Wanted's debut album. And this is, everybody had a CD player. See, I'm talking about analog, man. I miss the feeling of just like grabbing a CD, not knowing what it is, looking at the cover art and shit, and like just putting it in. But I remember literally, taking the CD upstairs and putting it in, and hearing like, some of their like opening songs and some of the stuff they were saying. I come to find out that like Philly's Most Wanted was from my neighborhood. They from Southwest. So, and that was always a thing, right? Like I feel like, especially in the early aughts, to see artists from Philadelphia start to really get shine. You started seeing in the late 90s, I would probably say with like Beans, Eve, then you started the entire neo soul movement, everything from like the Soulquarians to, everyone, Jill Scott, Music Soul Child, Bilal, a lot of those artists who came through my dad's production label of A Touch of Jazz and stuff like that. To see artists from the crib like shine was always, and I didn't know the language then, but it was always a true sign of representation. I feel like, being from Philly, for a long time, we were kind of always under, like in the shadow of New York, even still to this day. Like, there used to be times where, people would be like, I'm going to go to Philly for a festival. I'm going to go to New York for a festival. I don't need to go to Philly. And that's definitely changed. Like, I think Philadelphia has been, really highlighted as a market that people need to hit now. But, it wasn't always like that. And to see, a lot of our shining moments came through periods of strife. And like, to hear State Property go on Hot 97 and completely just annihilate Hot 97 and just that those freestyles were the stuff of legend. It was really, really dope. It gave a sense of pride of like, what and who Philadelphians are. I've always said, if you can make it out of Philly, you can make it anywhere. And I stand on that, and I truly believe that. And I always said that me being from the crib has allowed me to not just live in New York City for the last 10 years, but thrive up here. And from a musical standpoint, and having those early experiences and having a lot of experiences that I understand aren't normal. Funny story, I've never told this to really anybody. It just came up. I remember my stepdad managed two producers by the name of Dre and Vidal. And I've known Dre and Vidal. They used to work, with my father at A Touch of Jazz. And at the time, I remember my senior year of high school, they were working on an R&B album called Confessions. And my stepdad let me borrow an unmixed version. It was a single version of Caught Up that they produced. And I definitely... shit. I didn't take it to school. That would have been incredibly stupid if I'd have lost that. That'd been crazy. But I did bag a girl with that. I was like on some like, yo, you want to hear some new Usher? Like it was some shit like that. It was some shit like that. And it worked. I mean, shit, it worked. But I just remember like incredible, like when I remember and thinking about stuff like that, I'm like, yo, like that ain't some normal shit that a kid, from my ends would say or my ends would experience. And you know, when I look back at I would say my professional life over the last 10 plus years, you know, being able to write about music and now operating as an artist myself and as a DJ, you know, how I grew up completely shaped everything of kind of what I'm doing now and my perspective on music now.
It's really interesting to hear about your history and hear about your love for your city and how that influences your love for music. And I'd actually ask you, when did you really start taking DJing seriously? And if you could tell us what's been your most memorable DJ gig so far?
Well, I feel like I've always wanted to DJ. For a long time, I didn't. And, you know, it wasn't necessarily for, you know, reasons that people would imagine. A lot of people kind of assume that I didn't DJ, you know, because of my father, in the sense of being afraid to kind of follow in his footsteps. That was never an issue for me. For me, I wanted to DJ for a long time. I'm self-taught. I started teaching myself back at the top of 2019. So I've only been DJing for about 4 years. But I wanted to DJ at the time I started DJing because I knew I thought it would be a good hobby. I thought it would be a good hobby, just something fun to do. And B, I wanted to make sure I knew how important DJing was to my father, in the sense that DJing isn't something he does. DJing is like who he is. It would probably be, you know, family man DJ. You know what I'm saying? So for me, it was just a thing. I never wanted to trivialize something that I knew was so important to him. Yeah. So I think, you know, I kind of held off from actively like wanting to do it until it was just like, no, like without a shadow of a doubt, this is something I want to try and do. And yeah, I never thought that it would land me to kind of where I'm at now, you know, just as a DJ. You know, I thought I was just gonna like, you know, kind of pick it up, DJ some backyard functions for the homies in the summer, like, you know, kind of go, you know, we used to have a club up here in New York called Kinfolk. I was like, I'll go DJ in Kinfolk every once in a while. And that was kind of the extent of it. But I'll say that I started DJing at a point in my life where I was going through like a lot mentally, in the form of like employment. Like I was just having some real down luck with like jobs and shit up here. Like, you know, the market was kind of like turning. And, you know, I found myself DJing, and I found, before anything else, I just found myself genuinely having fun doing it. And I was more focused on just like having fun, like, oh, I'm really enjoying this. And what I didn't realize is, like, you know, my friends who were like my roommates at the time, or, you know, friends I would have come over, like I wouldn't really DJ in front of too many people, but like, you know, if the homies were here, I would just kind of like practice. And I would be practicing, and then I would do something, and I would look up, or I would see like cats like heads pop up. Like, you know, they may be like working on something, and they hear something and they look at me like, the fuck was that? And I didn't want to notice them noticing me. So like I just kind of like kept my head down and doing it. And it really, like, they kind of like cornered me one day and was like, yo, like, I don't think you realize how like good you are at this. Like, if someone were to tell us that you've been DJing for like a year or some change, like you could get that off. Like, I don't think people would believe you if you told them you've only been DJing for like 2 months. And I think a big reason for that is just like, you know, granted, I never DJed before, but I've always been around great DJs. I've always, you know, probably even just subconsciously, like, you know, again, just from how I grew up, and, you know, even those formative years of, you know, writing a blog and like really being engulfed in like culture and you know, music, and, you know, being as much of a Neptunes head as I was, like all of that stuff was kind of just cooking in here. And then when I found ways to put it, you know, put it out and get output out of it and use my hands, I got on stuff very, very fast. So that was kind of like my start, you know. Like I remember I started DJing, or I started teaching myself January of 2019. My first gig was on my birthday in April of 2019. My first travel gig was like late May. I came down to the 7-5, and I did a party during something in the water. And it's actually crazy. Like people, they would probably say, like, I felt as though I bombed it because I was just so nervous. I was scared. Like, you know what I'm saying? One thing I've realized about myself when it comes to DJing is like when you operate in big spaces with like big sound, like really, really high profile sound systems, literally feeling the floor shake when you do something, or like, you know, it kind of messed up my like equilibrium a little bit, and I was scared as shit. So like I kind of bombed it, you know. Shout out to my man Doug and them. Like, they were like, yo, we want to have you back, and yo, you killed it. And I was like, yeah, they might have thought I killed it. It was one of the first times where like I've learned like I can be very particular about my sets, but everybody else was like, oh, you did good. And I gave myself bail. I'm like, yo, for that to be my second DJ gig ever, you know, I'm cool with that. But that was the first time that I like, I don't want to say that it wasn't when I got serious, but I was just like, if I'm gonna do this, like I'm gonna do this. And I always knew going into it, I was like, me being Jazzy Jeff's son, I cannot be a bad DJ. And I used that as kind of like a North Star almost of like, if I'm gonna do this shit, I'm gonna do this shit right. And I'm gonna be one of the best niggas out. And, you know, I feel like I've been doing pretty good so far. And you asked me my favorite gig, or most memorable gig. Most memorable, I would probably say I DJ'd at the Roost Picnic last year in Philly. And I would probably say that's most memorable just because of like the many full circle moments I've had with that. Like, you know, I've gone to the Roost Picnic as a +1, as Jeff's son. I've gone to the Roost Picnic as a music writer and interviewing people there. And then to go as talent was like crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like, to have a flyer with my face and my name on it saying that I'm performing at the Roost Picnic was crazy. Like, that was probably the biggest crowd I've ever played in front of. It might have been close to a couple thousand people out there. And I didn't even kind of realize that until I remember I was walking back to my roommate's car and with like my equipment. Like, we were just like, yo, I'm gonna put my equipment in the car so we can like just kind of go out and about and like, you know, mingle in the rest of the festival. It was after my set. And I remember the walk from the stage to where the cars was, and there was so many people. And I remember hearing the DJ who went on after me was playing. And I remember the farther we got, you could still hear the music, and like people were still dancing to him playing. And I remember I was just like, wait, y'all can hear me all the way back here? And they was just like, yeah. And I was just like, damn, dog. Like, you know, even just kind of asking, I was like, how many people were in that section alone? It was like, no, like a couple thousand. So, you know, it was, you know, and just, you know, having an opportunity to play at home, you know, playing, you know, in Philly, seeing people I knew from all aspects of my life, you know, who probably hadn't at the time come to see me play. It was really special. So I'll probably say the Roost Picnic is up there for sure.
That had to be rewarding. Like, you talk about how you didn't want to do it unless you take it seriously, and then to actually start stepping into like what feels more like a calling than just like a decision. And it really did pay off in that way for you to see like 2,000 people listening to you play. That's amazing.
You know, it was dope. It was dope. I mean, more than anything else, like I definitely, like I'll say, I don't know if I've ever fallen in love with something as fast as I fell in love with DJing. And again, you know, it found me at a point in my life where I was very much in flux. Like, I didn't know if I was going to go back to the freelance world. I didn't know if I was going to go back to writing. I didn't know, like, at the time I was working in like marketing and advertising and stuff up here in New York. And I just didn't know what I was going to do. And then, you know, I found DJing, and, you know, I like the idea of, you know, me working for myself, me eating what I kill, in the sense of like, you know, I'm the one that's going to decide, you know, how much money I'm getting, or I'm the one that's going to decide, you know, when I wake up. I'm the one that's going to decide to not, you know, lay myself off. In a very weird way, it was kind of like the best job security and job structure I probably have ever had, just because I know that like it's all dependent on me, and I'll bet on myself, you know, at any time. So it was dope. It was like, yeah, like you were right, like a very full circle moment. I've had a lot of moments like that where, you know, just kind of like, you know, in the sense of just being surreal. Like, you know, I went to the Blue Note Jazz Festival in Napa last weekend or 2 weekends ago. And it was the first time, you know, my dad performed on Sunday with Rakim. He also did like the really big after party that Saturday night. And it was like one of the first times that I've been in a space like that as a DJ, and even kind of as an artist. Like, it's still very weird calling myself an artist in that way. But like, it was my first time I've been in that type of space like that with those type of like people, you know, as an artist. And to get people and to have people kind of come to me and like, hey, yo, you're Cory Townes. Like, I know who you are. Like, yo, like you nice. You know, like I had a friend of my father's who's a part of a very, very legendary rap group. You know, he kind of came to me when I saw him. He was like, hey, man, before anything else, I want to tell you, you cold. And I was like, I'm cold? Like, for real? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, not taking it, but I'm just like, hey, man, thank you. You know, I gave him the church man joint, but in my mind, I'm like, he said I'm cold like that? He's like, nah, like, yo, you nice. Like, I be seeing what you be doing. I be seeing, you know, there's times where I've DJed with my father. Like, you know, he still does like the Twitch stuff and things like that. So, you know, I've DJed with him a couple times on there, and it's really been, I guess, a chance for people to see me over the years and how I've grown as a DJ. And he's like, nah, like, I'm gonna tell you, like, you nice. And that's very surreal. That's a very surreal, I guess, experience. Is very surreal happening. And then like I do find that I have a lot of full circle moments in times like that.
Yeah, man. I actually was at Roots Picnic last year. My fiance had been before. That was my first one. And I was just like just so happy to just be, like I said, just growing up in the music time that we did, just to be in what is one of the biggest celebrations in music in our culture, but also like very much a celebration of music, the Philly cultural scene, and that whole space, being all those people in one spot was just amazing to me. And I was so grateful for my time in Philly, man. And Roots Pick, I'm so glad I got to experience it at least one time and be like while I was there. You know what I mean? Like, just let me just go down the street to the to Fairmont and just pull
the
up.
man center, yeah, man. And you know, I feel like selfishly, I wish the Roots Picnic didn't change, you know, as much as it did, and it didn't grow as much as it did. But that's incredibly just selfishly. Like I'm so proud of what they've been able to grow just that festival into. Like, it's a legitimate festival that people, it's like a destination festival now. Like, you know, for a long time it was, you know, kind of like if you know, you know. I would actually kind of compare it to what, you know, Blue Note is kind of now, where it's like it's so very much if you know, you know, and people are starting to find out more and more. You know, I've seen some amazing lineups and amazing talent, you know, all on one bill at the Roots Picnic. And I think like that was something they've always been really good at doing, you know, just kind of, you know, tapping across the entire musical landscape and bringing different acts to Philly. And, you know, yes, do I miss when it was smaller at, you know, Delaware Avenue with the pier and stuff like that, for sure. But, you know, to have friends of mine, you know, hitting me up so excited. Yo, I bought tickets to the Roots Picnic. I'm going. And it's just like, you know, Philly Philly didn't used to be a place that people would just say like, oh, we're going to Philly for this. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, it's kind of, you know, ironic, especially when we're recording this, you know, find out the news about Made in America, you know, that used to be people's only real experience of going to the crib where they're like, oh, I'm going to Made in America. And then, you know, you would ask them, they may have like mixed, you know, reviews. Some people had a good time, but like, you know, when you have a festival of that many people, of like 50 to 100,000 people over a span of a couple of days, like you're going to get different experiences. Whereas I feel like people who go to the Roots Picnic, they still have a chance to experience the city in ways that ain't, you know what I'm saying? It's like they get a chance to see the city. It isn't just like just a commodity. Oh, we just went for the shows and that's that. Right. So yeah, man, I'm glad you had a chance to go too. I'm very excited for where they're gonna go and how they keep raising the bar and stuff like that. And you know, it's always good to see other people experience, you know, my city and see, you know, why and how I love it like the way I do.
And for me too, like I said, just the connections that I've had inspirational and culturally growing up in the 37 years of life that I've had, just to be able to experience Philly in that way, you know, obviously growing up a fan of your dad and Will, and like Freshman is one of my favorite shows in the world. And just to be able to see, you know, the place that they grew up at, but also now, like, you know, since we've been connected and, you know, sharing space and having connections, to be able to see you on social media show how much love and respect you have for your pops and how much like the relationship that y'all have is really dope for me to see, like as someone who kind of knows you, but don't really know you, but also like has been in some shared spaces and some shared experience. So that I just want to think I really appreciate that, especially sharing Philly stuff. You know what I'm saying? The Eagles, all the stuff that's come from like the dope stuff that happens in Philly. But you know, from a DJ perspective, what are some of the technical things that you've really learned from him?
So first I'll address the first thing. Yeah, like my dad is my man. You know, I feel like, you know, as we all get older, we realize, you know, how fluid our relationships can be with our parent. I know that as I've gotten older, you know, it's a trip when you start to realize your parents are people. Like, you know, your parent just ain't your parent. Like your mom is, you know, a person. Your dad is a person. And you, like, as you get older, bless you, as you get older, you know, you start to, you know, you just start to learn them as people. And I feel like, you know, that's been something that has been a thing with us over the last couple of years. I do think DJing has allowed us to, I won't necessarily say grow closer. I feel like we understand each other a little bit more. You know, he understands me and I definitely understand him. I know one of the things that I've grown to understand is that, you know, I'm incredibly blessed to say that like I've started to travel more DJing and travel more for work. And going through that and experiencing that has allowed me to see what it was like for him to do that when I was a kid, you know, in a sense of like, oh damn, like, you know, I'm in LA, you know, Monday through Thursday, and then I gotta go to San Francisco on Friday, and then I'm not seeing Brooklyn until the following Thursday. You know what I'm saying? Like, and going through that and experiencing that and experience how tired you might be from shit like that. Like, you know, just, and even not necessarily just the bad things, but the good things too, like being able to just travel and see new places and see new things. And, you know, I find myself texting him a lot where I'm just like, hey, I'm in this city. Do you know, what's some stuff I should check out? Or just I found myself even just hitting him up like, yo, this travel shit is crazy. This travel shit is crazy. And, like I do think that we've been able to, my family's been really blessed over the last couple of years and I'm very, very happy and very proud of him, because I do think I feel like my dad was always well loved and respected. I feel like that's starting to be more prevalent, like across the board. Anytime I meet someone and it comes out who my father is, like, I've never heard a bad story about DJ Jazzy Jeff. And more importantly, it's always been a thing of like, yo, like if it isn't your dad is the illest DJ ever, it's like, yo, your dad's a real thorough dude. Like, I've always had respect for him. I always liked him and and like that's what kind of one of the things I pride myself on, is like just moving with a sense of integrity, moving with a sense of purpose. You know what I'm saying? Always being able to hold my name high in that way. And I think through subconsciously I've kind of gotten that from him. And then, just from, things that I've learned, again, I'm self-taught. So like, me and my dad have never really had a session of, hey, I'm going to show you how to do this. Like everything that I've learned, I've kind of learned on my own. We talk about DJing very often. And I think one of the things that he's taught me and that I've always held it with me is there's a difference between selectors and technicians. Your selector, their focus is more music driven. Like they know the music to play. Like they know the right time to play this record. They know how to take a party or a show or a crowd on a ride, and it's almost like it's just one continuous experience. And I think that was something that I had within me very early, especially as when I started DJing out more and I started seeing like, as the sets kind of got longer and I started getting more and more comfortable with it, where somebody like, hey, we need you for 3 hours. And before I'd be like, man, I don't know how much music I can play in 3 hours. Now it's like, oh, I could take a crowd on a ride in 3 hours and take them in so many different places. He taught me that there's selectors in that sense. And then there's technicians who, is very self-explanatory. They're incredibly technical. They have all of they have the skill set, the toolbox. They know how to do every scratch under the sun and, just everything, like the technical aspect of DJing. And my pops told me very early on that it is a very select group of individuals who are amazingly great at both of them. More times than not, you'll run into DJs where this DJ may be more of a selector than a technician, and this DJ may be more of a technician than a selector. And it's perfectly fine being that. Because I think for me, and I'm not going to lie, I probably still feel not necessarily pressure, but I still feel an interest to do it. The same way I said that as Jazzy Jeff son, I can't be a bad DJ. I feel like as Jazzy Jeff son, I need to know how to scratch my ass off. And that's something that, I'm constantly, just working towards, trying to teach myself, trying to learn these scratches and get that down. In the beginning, I did feel pressure behind it. And, he kind of alleviated that pressure. Just like, yo, like, he named DJs who I thought were incredible. He was like, when the last time you heard them scratching the set? And I was just like, it's a good point. So if not for nothing else, I do aim to be one of the greats in that. Like, I do think I'm a pretty good selector. Like I've kind of gotten to the point where I'm comfortable enough saying that I'm a good DJ. I still think there's a world of, stuff for me to know and stuff for me to learn. But, the selector aspect is something I do feel comfortable in. And I know that the technical side is going to come over time. One of the more fulfilling things that I've gotten from my father at this point is, just in the perspective of actual music and where music is. For me, like I said before, I play a lot of dance music. I play a lot of house music, obviously with, Afrobeat and music from the continent coming over the last couple of years, and being in a market like New York, I've been very, I've tried to be as current as I can with like different Afrobeat music, especially stuff like I'm a Piano, like being able to put him on to different records has been incredible. Like I can't describe the sense of, I guess, pride I might have in that sense. There's times where, especially like, for the longest time, the same way I said I would never probably be a DJ, I ended up DJing. I always said I would never like end up like making music or like making edits and stuff, and I started doing that too. Shout out, that was COVID. Omicron got me into making like edits and stuff like that, because there was a point where COVID was running rampant through the streets in New York. I think at the top of like 2022. And like, I didn't leave my house for like 6 weeks because I thought we were going to be locked down again. I didn't realize that the government was like, nah, F that. Y'all still going to be outside, just get tested. But I'm so thankful that, you know, I did, because, you know, it really allowed me to lock in and really try stuff out. And I caught a groove with it and I started doing it. So even like just like making edits myself, you know, I would occasionally, you know, everybody wants to like kind of that approval from like their parents. Like I wouldn't really like send him stuff for real. But then there would be times where he would hear me play and he'd be like, what's that? And I'd just be like, oh, I made this. And I send it to him. A particularly proud moment I had fairly recently was at the Blue Note Jazz Fest. Blue Note Jazz Festival, where he did the Saturday night party. It was no phones allowed in there, but like, you know, everybody was in there from the festival and stuff like that. And you know, he was killing it, just killing the set. Like he's bodying. And like you have guys like, you know, like Nas was there, you know, wilding out. Dave Chappelle is in there walking around, just like he's on the mic, like, Jeff, you cold, nigga. Like just different stuff like that. Like it was just a crazy time. And my dad played a version of an edit that I made him when we were all in Texas for South by Southwest. And I remember I heard him play. It's a version that I've made of an I'm a Piano song for a remix for All Right by Kendrick. And I heard him play it and I'm like, is he gonna play like my shit? And the beat dropped and everybody thought it was just gonna be regular All Right, and it was the I'm a Piano version of it. And like the entire room went crazy. Like Dave Chappelle damn near is like holding on for dear life. Like, you know, it's fucking Nas, man. Like Nas like the quintessential New York nigga. Like Nas is like, yo, that was hard. And like meanwhile, I'm on the side with my younger brother. And I'm like, I'm losing my shit. I'm like, play that shit, nigga. Play that shit. And it's funny. Granted, I don't talk to my father like that normal. But like, I'm just like, play that shit, play that shit. And it's funny because, you know, one thing I will say is that when you're DJing, you're in such a box. Like you're in the box that you're so focused on what's in front of you and mad at things. But it's very rare that you kind of break that box. All of a sudden I look up and like I see him looking at me and pointing at me and smiling. And then everybody else looked at me like, well, why you pointing at you? And it was like, oh, this is the record you sent them. And I was like, yeah. And they were like, oh, like, you know what I'm saying? Nah, it's like, yo, that was hard, son. And I'm just like, nigga, like what? Like, if not for nothing else, and it had less to do with, you know, the praise of the people and stuff like that was really cool. But just to know that like me and my old man have a relationship through music and with music, that I can give him something that he can use and he can use out in the world, and it gained that type of reaction. Like I was like, yo, shut it down. I don't need nothing else. Like, you know what I'm saying? I didn't need nothing else from the weekend. So I feel like DJ Jazzy Jeff is the best DJ ever. Hard stop. And I say that not as his son, but I say that as a DJ. And to be able to just learn from him, how I've learned from him, I'm super appreciative of that.
That's super dope, yo.
I'm gonna have to get that remix.
It was hard. That shit was... I'll send it to you for sure.
Thank you.
Yo, make sure to check out the rest of our conversation with Cory Townes on episode 41, part 2. Peace and love.